are now live. We are live here at the TForce LCS rundown. Good evening, everybody, and maybe even good morning for those of you listening out in podcast land. My name is Mark Ganorum, and this is the TForce LCS rundown. I am joined this week, as always, by Optimus Tom.
How's it going, guys? Caused a couple earthquakes on my trip to LA, but I'm back in Jersey, so now it's raining.
You were just messing things up all over the place.
I'm a force of nature.
And now that's gone too.
Season 3 puns.
Greg,
we can only hope.
Incredible Mushroom.
Hello, everybody. How you doing?
And joined this week, our fourth. We're just going nuts. We're just bringing people on left and right. We have Mitchell Cerealbawks.
How's it going, guys?
Well, welcome everybody to the show. Cereal, why don't you start us off? Tell us a little bit about who you are and what you're all about.
Well, I am a Plat 3 support main. I've been playing for, about 2 or 3 years. I played through Season 1 and 2, took a break in Season 3, and kind of came back with a vengeance now. I've been following LCS since the start of it. I did a small podcast a long while ago for a gaming site that they wanted to hear about this. Oh, salaries are going to be paid to esports players? What's that all about? And so I've been literally following from the very first announcement, and I'm just really happy I get to talk about it and the other scenes with you guys.
Well, welcome. We are super pumped to have you. This is the quadfecta now in proper Trinity Force fashion. We, of course, have to abandon the try and go with the quadra kill.
You can't make a Trinity Force without a recipe. Someone's worth at least 3 gold in this call.
That's right. What is it, 375 to make the combination?
No, it's literally 3 gold.
It's literally 3 gold.
And so am I the one worth that 3 gold then?
Well, we'll find out after this
since I'm the combined cost.
It would have to be because you completed it. So.
Well, there you go.
I feel very valued then.
Awesome. Well, for
think
those
about
of
it this way: you
listening...
freed up 2 inventory slots.
For those of you listening out in podcast land, do not forget to find us on LCS Trinity Force, lcs.trinityforcepodcast.com. We're going live on stream.trinityforcepodcast.com or on Twitch every Sunday night at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. Don't forget to review us on iTunes and tell us how lovely we are, how good-looking Optimus Tom is, and how fantastic my bow ties are every week. We still have not hit the end of my supply. I still am putting out the unique ones for those of you listening. Also, PAX, we will be there. Namely, me. I will be there, and I will have lots of swag and fun things to give out, including Trinity Force Podcast t-shirts and RP. So that is very exciting. Do not forget to come and find me. You have to tell me the keyword Optimal Tom. You're lucky because I didn't do Optimal Tim.
Yeah, I'm really lucky, I guess.
And of course,
got run over by a car, but I'm still alive. I'm that kind of lucky.
And of course, do not forget to check out our sister shows, Trinity Force Podcast, which airs on Monday and Wednesday, and the Oz LOL podcast that goes on Thursday. So let's hop right in to this week. This week has been lots and lots of fun. We've discovered something. We've learned something totally new about the LCS, a previously unexplored factor, and that is Optimus Tom's ability to end the career of any LCS player. Last episode, for those people who weren't listening or didn't come and see us live, he specifically said that not every player can quite be like Skara and play in the LCS forever. Well, nail in the coffin, Skara, mid laner of Dignitas, one of the oldest, I think maybe even the oldest LCS player out there, and League of Legends, just Dignitas incarnate, has retired.
I want to say he's the 4th oldest. I think
4th oldest.
Home,
no,
Kumandu, and Skara, and Saint
Retired.
Vicious are all
Retired.
older than him.
Saint Vicious. He's gone.
Half
Who
season.
came back
okay,
this
though.
week?
Yeah, retire will come back next week. It's Super
That's
Week.
true.
And don't worry, I'm sure Curse will introduce support in about a week. So
There you go. Well, Dignitas, Scar has retired. He's moved to the position of Coast, and Golden Glue has joined the team as mid laner. At this point, I mean, Dignitas being pretty mediocre in the rankings, not bad enough to get pushed into relegations just yet, and not good enough to really contend for even the top 3. They're currently sitting at 4th. Do you guys even really think this is going to matter at all for the team in this spring split?
for this year, no. I mean, it's interesting to watch. It's interesting to see the evolution of players as they're coming through the LCS, and as the sort of next tier of players is coming in, where we've got now players becoming coaches and players becoming shoutcasters. Now that this thing has been going on for a few years, this is, I think, an eventual step that's going to happen. You're going to see probably quite a few other teams, either this year in the off season or after next year, move some of their star players to more of a mentoring coaching role, and then start to develop younger talent that's coming up the ranks.
I love that sentiment. I love the idea of the life of an LCS player extending past just the normal game time, where they can retire for real and join some sort of support role, either for Riot or for one of the other championship leagues, or even the team itself, but don't fucking do it in the goddamn middle of a split.
Yeah, I think
Why
that's
does
pretty
this happen?
questionable.
Why does this happen?
Well, they're still fighting for. I mean, they're gonna be probably in the playoffs as it stands right now. But if they lose that first game or that first series, they're in relegation. So, or they would be fighting for their spot in relegation. And I think that's a really terrible time to kind of put a lot of pressure on a new player when, I mean, they could be out of the LCS.
I feel like a little bit opposite of that. Dignitas, the way they stood, were not doing the best that they've done previously, but they were doing well enough to stay in the LCS. So knowing that they're confident in their players and have the potential to bring Skara back in, because he's still on a substitute role, technically. So he could still be brought in to play with them if they so choose to. Knowing that they think they're good enough to at least stay in the LCS, bringing in the talent now when there's a super week and this week to still give him that experience on stage, that LAN experience, the LCS stage feel that so many players, so to speak, choke on when they first start playing. This is to get him used to that, to mesh with the team, and by next split, well, then everything's going to be fine. So I kind of like the idea of bringing him in now, knowing that they're secure in their own talents.
So in other words, this is like the spring split is the extended preseason theory.
At least for Dignitas in this case. Like, I wouldn't change somebody on TSM or EG at this point. Like, I would say that's like an off-season kind of move for those teams.
I think
Why
needs
EG?
to try whatever is possible.
Yeah.
Well, we saw EG bring in 3 substitute members due to visa issues, and it didn't really work for them. So
They had another. Was the guy who placed Crepo? I forget who did that when they were missing all 3 of their European members. Was that the same support this week? Because I saw he wasn't playing again.
for the first day it was.
Okay.
And then Crepo came back for today.
Oh, okay.
I mean, that's a valid point. You make a really strong argument for getting the training in there and getting the work in there. But when you take sort of a look at the ability for a player just to retire like that, to be able to step out of line and do essentially whatever really they want to, it creates such an unstable situation, because Skara is Skara. He's moving into the coaching position, and that's great. But what do you get when these players can just drop out for, other reasons? They're not performing well enough and now they want to step down. Like, I just feel like this is such an instability, and there's such a lack of responsibility to the individual player that they can just leave whenever they want for pretty much any reason they want to. I hate it.
I gotta say
happen.
though, this was not I'm almost convinced it's not 100% Skara's decision. Like Skara, as I said last week, he'd probably play until he was dead if he had the choice to.
Sure. That makes me feel better though. I would love to hear that the management of Dignitas said, Skara, you're not performing well enough to be competitive in the team. We're going to have you step down, and we're going to replace you with this team member. When it comes from the player, it just puts such an interesting spin on it. When you take a look at athletic sports, if you have a player who's messing up, who's not doing well, who for whatever reason is underperforming to what the expectation is, they get benched. And it's made clear to them that they're benched, and it's made clear to the fans that they're benched. And they're replaced by another player who can potentially fill that role. And then after that person has given enough time to think, like, hey, this is my job, this is what I'm supposed to be doing, and I'm not meeting my expectations, that's when, they're brought back in and put into the role. This whole concept of retirement, I mean, I can't stand it. I can't stand it when a player goes out and retires, and especially like certain players in the LCS where they retire, then come back, start playing again for another team or start playing again for their own team because they're needed as a sub. Like, I can understand you need the person, but just say you're stepping down temporarily. Don't make this whole retirement thing a thing.
Yeah, I mean that would never happen in most sports, where you wouldn't see somebody just say, "Oh, I'm retiring for just because you're not playing well," and you want to give somebody else. I mean, it might not even be giving somebody else a chance, but yeah, I guess the classic example there.
And retirements do happen, but they rarely happen in the middle of the year. Occasionally, you'll get someone that says, "Oh, well, this will be my last season," but even then, they usually don't say that unless they're making a run for the Super Bowl or something.
Right. And I mean, maybe that's what would make me feel better. I would have loved to see this whole Dignitas thing play out. And Tom, you make a really good point about getting Golden set up in with the team and getting the jive going in time for the summer split. That totally makes sense to me, and I can support that decision. But it would make me feel a lot better if these players just waited till the end of their split or the end of their series. Follow through, see your team through till the end, or at least till a solid break, and then make your step down. And you can even admit it halfway through the season. I don't care. Bring it up whenever you want to. But don't just drop out halfway through things and have that be okay. Great.
I mean, there's a possibility that he had said that to the team, and they kind of were just thinking, hey, if you're already on your way out, it's kind of like in any job situation. If you say, I'll be gone in a little bit, they'll say, well, why can't we just replace you now? Right. Get everyone that experience. And I mean, I think it really remains to be seen how much it's really going to affect them come playoffs, because it could be great. It could be, if they stay in the LCS, which I think they will. But if they stick around, like, they've got extra experience, already got a leg up going into the next season with a new player, and could make a good push, depending on if they mesh with him really well.
Well, it's all yet to be seen. And I think this is a good transition into talking about what happened in this previous week. For those of you watching live, again, we are going to be pushing off the recording of the actual results of the games. Most of you should have seen that. The LCS is now done for the week and recorded, so please just go and check that out if you haven't seen that already. But not a lot of movement on the NA side of things. Obviously, there was quite a bit of stuff that went on just with the whole Dignitas thing. But, I mean, really, Cloud9 was able to overtake TSM and are now into first place, but EG and XGG just still sitting at the bottom. With Team Coast moving up to 9 and 15, that's going to be a very difficult hole for them to crawl out of. Any chance for them to make it out of this hole, guys?
Team Coast to get out of their hole?
EG and XG.
Oh, EG and XG. I mean, they're now 2 games down, or no, 3 games down on from Coast. So
with 4 games to be played.
Yeah.
And Coast, considering they went 2-0 this week.
Yeah.
XTG, I feel like it maybe has a chance if, depending how things go, EG, I'm pretty much writing off this season. I mean, they're not even playing with their full team for the majority of games the past couple weeks, so
Well,
I think
XTG's,
they pretty much have to pack that one up.
I think XTG's got a really tough. Oh, they got a tough next week. They got Cloud9 and TSM just
Well,
to start, and
Coast
I mean,
has to lose 2.
Coast has to lose 3, I think. Because if they're at 9 and 18, or sorry, 9 and 15, then EG's at 6 and 18 right now. So yeah, they've got to lose 3, and I think Coast may have winning records on both EG and XEG, so that would already push the tiebreaker. Yeah, against them.
Yeah, Coast has to get through Curse, TSM, Cloud9, and
EG.
And Dignitas.
Dignitas.
Wait, what?
Yeah, week 11.
Okay,
Curse.
you might have said. Okay.
Yeah. And, I mean, it's not impossible. I think they might be able to get a game over Dignitas, maybe, depending on how well Golden's solidified by then. This is going to be his first Super Week, and that's pretty... Well, it's only 2 games into the schedule. 3 games into the schedule.
You're wondering if the glue will have dried by then?
Oh! We'll see if he sticks.
Who got the Claude in here? Well, yeah,
He's
it's
just waiting.
So I guess if Coast does win a single game, they're in the playoffs, and EG and XEG are out. Just by tiebreakers. They
Out
can't.
for now. Out into relegations, and we'll see. And who knows whether or not of those other teams who's going to get pushed into relegation due to the tournament. We'll leave the discussion for that after Super Week next week. But that's all I really want to cover for NA this week, unless you guys have anything else spectacular. I really want to focus on the chaos that is EU and some other fun and interesting things that came up this week. Any other thoughts on the NA before we move on?
I would just like to mention that TSM and Cloud9 are tied, and we should be talking about that in an exciting way if the spring split wasn't so.
Cloud9 is technically winning because they have a winning
tiebreaker.
record. Yeah, they have the tie over
yeah, that's true.
TSM.
But they do play next week, and if it goes 2-2, they would get a playoff there, and the winner would avoid CLG, which is, I mean, the only other team that looks threatening right now.
I'd be more excited to see Cloud9 go to All-Stars than I would TSM, even though I am a pretty hardcore TSM fan, just because their recent success in IEM recently. So that will be interesting to see, to say the least. TSM having some pretty good games this week. We'll see how they do in Super Week coming up. But speaking of All-Stars, All-Star voting has actually opened. For those of you who have not gotten the opportunity, go ahead and log in. For those of you, and it took me a while to figure this out, don't follow the links on Reddit unless you're in EU West, because that takes you to the EU West version of lolesports.net. You can change that in the upper left-hand side to go over to NA. Log in and submit your vote. Let's see. Who do you guys think is going to go? First of all, who has voted? Raise your hand and make the people in podcast land feel bad for not being.
So half of us feel terrible right now.
The podcast people don't know if you rose your hand yet or not.
Oh, that's true.
Touche.
I rose my hand because
I mean, we all definitely did. Big air quotes there.
Who do you think is going to get picked? Greg, you didn't raise your hand. Who's your picks right now? 3 players. Give me NA, give me EU.
All right. So North America, I think Meteos, absolutely.
First of all, have you checked out the list yet?
I'm going through this page and I'm like running in circles trying to find the list.
No,
just to log in first.
Don't. Give it to me. Give me the rundown. Who are you getting?
All right. If I could pick anybody off all the NA rosters, I'd pick Wild Turtle next special.
Okay.
And I'd pick Meteos.
All right. So you have one of those 3 people in the top 3 currently. Anybody else want to throw? Actually, Cereal and Optimus Tom, you both have checked the list.
I haven't.
You haven't. Okay, who do you got?
Well, quick question. Is it still true that the teams going to All Stars, the full teams, are not going to be eligible for that event. Like players on those teams.
What?
I was
Believe
pretty
so.
sure
Is
that's
that true?
true.
That's
yeah. So
horseshit.
that's one of the
I've-
things that you're going to see.
I've
This is the
heard-
worst All-Star game
I've
ever.
heard
I ruined
that
everything,
floated
guys.
around. I've heard it floated around, but it doesn't say it anywhere on the
I
actual
thought
website.
I could have sworn it
That's
did.
pretty dumb
somewhere.
if that's true.
Um,
Because it's like, hey,
No, it was on the Reddit. It was on the Reddit thread when they asked a bunch of questions about All Stars. A bunch of Riot people were on there answering questions. I'm pretty certain they said that each team that makes it will not have their players eligible. So it would probably be the next. If whoever wins, they'll drop them off the
hey
stand.
fans, pick the best team or watch the best teams compete, and then we're gonna pick the all stars from each league, but not the best team, not the players from those teams, the ones you probably like the most.
Yeah.
That's
I found the
silliness.
list now.
But who do you have for the top three? Your top three, not the
My
top three, 'cause
not-
this
my
is-
top
this
three-
is subjective.
I really like. I think Double Lift will go. I know that Wild Trail's got that huge following because TSM has more fanboys than I don't even know K-pop stars. And otherwise, I don't know. It's going to be a popularity contest, anyway. So it'd probably be, I'd see Dyrus going, and I mean, assuming that TSM doesn't win the spring split, Dyrus, and then Xpecial is real popular too.
All right.
Odd One could be there. Is it only 3 per?
It's 3 per region,
You have to vote for 3.
and if anybody,
Oh, it's 2. It's only 2 that go per region, right?
really,
Yeah, 2 that go.
You
but
have to vote for 3.
Yes.
though.
all right,
Yeah,
and
2
anybody want to venture a guess? Take a stab at the EU side. of
Oh,
things?
easy peasy. Overpow.
I don't even see it. All right, well, here, let's
Not
just get
even
into
close.
it right now.
All right, so the 2 people that are going to win Europe are going to be either Diamond Prox or Alex Ich and Reckless. So it's a Gambit member and Reckless are going to go. But who I voted for Svenskeren, I voted for Forgiven, and I voted for Overpow.
I
'Cause
don't
those
see,
3 have extremely impressed me. They're
I
in
don't
like the
see
top
any of
20.
them.
They're
I
in
don't
like the
see
top
any.
20 somewhere, but
They're very
yeah.
far down, and I guarantee
Just
you,
wait.
at least on Overpow's side, that's because of their recent lack of
oh
success.
no, you just
Sven
wait
Skaren
until
is not even in the top 20.
you just wait until the Polish botnets start voting on this thing, and then Overpow's going to All Stars.
The entire Rocket's going to be going then.
Oh man. So right now on the NALCS, the 2 top winners are Bjergsen with a stupid commanding
Oh, yeah.
40,000 votes. The Burger King will certainly be going unless TSM manages to pull ahead in Super Week. Followed by Double Lift at 28, Meteos at 26, and then there's just a massive falling off with Wild Turtle and Dyrus at 16 and 15 respectively.
I am looking at the current list, and it's actually a bit
It's up,
up. Bjergsen is now
I should refresh.
44,500, and Double Lift is at 32,000. Meteos nearly 29.
Oh, well, there we go. There could be a little room for upset. And if C9 wins, that's perfect. The 2 top teams are actually going to get to go.
Well, yeah, you'll have one of those. Assumingly, one of those 3 will win the spring split.
Yeah,
Right.
sure.
So,
For sure.
Unless you have
Now,
another GGU spring split playoff round.
who knows? Well, they didn't win, but yeah,
Over
They
on
were
the
close.
EU side, in true EU form, things are a lot more close. We have Reckless at 41, Diamond at 37, Froggen at 30, and Xpeke, that's where the drop-off happens, at 25. Darian, Soaz, Alex. Basically, if you're not a Fnatic or a Gambit player and you're not Froggen, you're not in the top 10. Never mind, Wicked's number 10 on Alliance. So,
So Aranea is still on the list. He's at 18, and I'd love to see some trolls like push him through to
Skara.
after he retires, just push him and Skara through and have him play.
that's
I'm surprised at how low Cyanide is on this list. He's had an amazing split this year.
yeah.
Yeah,
I
but every
wanna
other
know-
player is more popular on their team, I
Because
think.
he's not Spanish.
Yeah.
I want to know who the trolls are. The 150 trolls who picked Wiz Fusion from Coast. Not to say that he's a bad player or anything, but like the guys at the bottom, They all have at least 150 votes, but
You would have hated my votes last All-Star. I was voting for Nick Wu top lane. I was voting for NK Inc. in the jungle. Nijaki was my mid laner. This team was going to win.
yeah. I mean, overall, the format of this All-Stars is, to me at least, incredibly disappointing. And I don't want to turn this into...
You don't even know the format, though. You got to vote on the format.
The teams. We know how the teams are gonna...
I want to watch an NA All-Star team versus an EU All-Star team versus other All-Star teams out there, and I want to see the best players playing together. I don't care how their fusion works. I don't care whether or not they're like not going to be great no matter what. I just want to see those best players playing.
Yeah,
I don't
but
want
to
see
be honest,
stupid one-on-ones.
To be honest, you don't know if they're going to be one-on-ones. You got to vote on the format. It could be 2 giant all-star teams. It could be like OGN Masters all-stars where they were all playing roles.
It can't be, because if they're only sending 2 people
per region,
yeah,
2 people per region.
You know what I would like to see? Hexakill all-star.
They could. It could be there.
That would be cool.
No,
Pick the
but
top
it would
6.
just be like some kind of novelty thing. I'd like that to be the tournament. Instead of a 5-person team, you get a 6-person team. Just like completely divorce it from the conventional meta.
Maybe you could. There's going to be 7 members from every region there. You don't know until they release the votes.
I'd like to submit my own format. I want to take the bottom 5 people from each region and make a worst of.
Make them play Dominion.
No.
I would love for them to play Dominion.
If you could see them play anything, like get 5 people Twisted Tree Line, get something completely different out there.
It's gonna be an ARAM, no minions, only level 1, no items. It's just gonna be a pillow fight.
No turrets. No turrets.
No turrets.
Just inhibitors.
Just
multiple
go up
inhibitors
with
you have to go
fists
through.
and just swat at each other. Teams on the NA side: Xsmithy, Benny, Inox, Cruiser the Bruiser from Dignitas. He's a sub, I think. It's
No, he's their top.
No, he's their
top
lane.
He's on top
Wow,
lane.
I don't watch enough Dignitas apparently.
Yeah, Kiwi could switch to
You don't
support
notice
last
because
season-
he's
for this
not really
season.
doing much.
Yeah, Wiz Fusion versus Mops, J-Ree, Cowtard, Kelliver, Selliver. Wow,
I think you got the next one.
Pronouncing in me, and Impaler. Who do you think would win that out of the 2? You have on NA, you have 3 top laners, an AD carrier, and a jungle.
NA
And
would
on
take
EU,
that.
you have 2 mids, a jungler, an AD carrier, and a support.
Well, that's so easy because EU only plays double AP compositions anyway, so you
There
have
you
a
go.
legit team.
They would destroy.
And you got a mid jungle combo from Super Hot Crew. So
There you go.
Yeah.
Plus, I
their
think
ganks are going to be
is,
so scary.
And there's going to be no salt whatsoever that they kick moves. It'll be fine.
Oh yeah.
Well, to throw some dates out at you guys there listening, we have April 12th is the cutoff date for the thing. On April 13th, they're going to reveal the first challenge format. The 20th, they'll reveal the second, and the third comes down on the 27th, and the fourth and final reveals on May 8th. The All-Stars, again, will be Paris, France this year between May 8th and 11th of 2014. So, any other points on the All-Star game before we move on?
Not on All-Star, but I think before we delve into EU, we really got to hit upon Korea for a second because
Do that briefly, and then
some
we can
things
actually...
are rumbling in Korea more than the earthquakes in LA that I caused.
Take it away, sir.
So, for all you guys that know, Season 3 World Champions, SK Telecom T1K, as if their name couldn't get long enough, were looking very favored to win OGN in the spring split. However, they had a little bit of trouble where their former support, Pumandu, stepped down, did not retire. He stepped down because Korea knows how to translate English better than we do. But he stepped down from the team and was replaced with Casper, who used to be, I forget his old Ice Bear on Jane Air Falcons. And he came in and they tied their sister team, SK Telecom T1S, more confusion. That's the one with Marin in the top lane and the ex-jungler Horo there. But they tied them 1-1. And then they beat Prime Optimus 2-0. And then there was a bit of a streaming event on Africa, which is one of their streaming services over in Korea, where Pumandu and Piglet were streaming duo queue together. bottom line comes down, Pumandu rejoins the roster, and they put him up against KT Rolster Arrows, which are a very tough team. And they get stomped. So now SK Telecom T1K, the Season 3 World Champions, their fate is not in their own hands. They need to hope that there's some sort of wacky three-way tie situation to even advance out of group stages in OGN. So times are changing over in OGN right now. We have Samsung Ozone, who didn't look strong at all at Worlds, top of their group. I don't think they've dropped a single match. The CJ teams are looking very shaky, especially Frost, mainly because they're in Ozone's group. And some of the teams there, like Samsung Blue, some of these other Squads B teams, like SK Telecom T1S, they're in first in their group stages. So it's the turmoil of the OGN league over there. It's crazy.
How do you think the OGN format compares to that of which we see at the NA and EU level? And if you could just give a really quick recap of what that format is for those listeners who may not know.
So the OGN format is the teams, there's 16 teams. They get divided into 4 groups of 4. And the situation is every team plays a best of 2 series. So each team gets to be blue side or red side exactly once in their series. There is a point value assigned for victory. A 2-0 is worth 3 points. A 1-1 tie is worth 1 point for each team. And the team who gets 0-2'd receives 0 points. At the end of the stage where everybody plays each other once, they add up the point totals and they look at the breakdown records. If the point totals are tied, they move on to the breakdown records. Did somebody have more 2-0s? Did somebody tie every single game? Did somebody have a 2-0, a 1-1, and an 0-2? And then they break it down that way. And if they're tied still, then they have I believe it is a best of 1 playoff match to see who advances.
Okay. I like that format. It's kind of cool.
Yeah. Just by the way, Frost is through.
Oh, Frost is through.
They locked that up. They went 2-0-1, so they lost to Ozone 2-0, but otherwise they're fine. No one else has really locked anything up because it's pretty much. Yeah, looking at the standings right now, it could go a lot of ways for the other groups besides the one we already talked about with the SKT.
Like I know Blaze's group is really close. I know the KT Bullets can still play spoiler in their group, so there's a whole lot of stuff going on. But the format itself, it allows for a lot more. It allows for a lot of games, and it's just, I don't know. I'm always in favor of more than best of 1 because I always crave more of these teams.
I feel like when you run into that situation, you have teams who are more willing to try like crazier builds because you always have the ability in the second game, if that didn't go the way you wanted it to, you always have the ability to fall back and just pick really safe builds. I feel like NA and EU, we see a lot of safe builds.
One of the things I really like about it is that unlike the spring-summer split kind of LCS ways that people qualify for All-Stars or Worlds, is they have the circuit point system that we used to have in NA and EU. And even if you lose in the group stages, and actually even later on, there's only circuit points assigned to the top 4 places. But then every team that doesn't make, I think, top 4 ends up being dropped into like a lower league, like the Challenger Series League that we have, and they play and can still earn points. So even though they're out of group stages, like SKT1 will probably be, they still have a chance to earn points towards Worlds qualifications, towards whatever. I think they've already locked up All Stars. At least I think that's what Monte Cristo was saying. But I like that. I like that secondary league, just because it's more interesting, I think, than Challenger Series is great because it's going to be bringing the people up to LCS potentially, but I like that these ones matter in the long run because that's how Najim Sword qualified so highly and actually was the top team in Korea last year going into Worlds because they ended up winning that lower bracket twice and then OGN winter, I think.
Well, let's not forget too that the teams from OGN who don't qualify fall down into the round of 8 or the round before the round of 8 of NLB, which is like the minor league for Korea, where all these challenger Korean teams are coming up and through, and they can earn themselves their own point values to go towards the Worlds count, and that also earns them seeding in the tournament to qualify for OGN. So that's how you have like an LGIM2 or like you said, the Najin Black Sword, who come up and these, like when the casters talk about them, this is how they know they're good because they have to still play Blaze and Frost and Bullets and Arrows and SK Telecom and the Jin Air teams and all these top tier teams. So I think it seeds really well into the Korean Challenger circuit too.
Yeah, they get more than one chance, whereas the relegated teams, or guys, teams looking to promote into LCS get one shot, and that's pretty much it. They don't get to play against those LCS teams pretty often, or at least not in a tournament setting.
All right. Well, let's switch gears. I want to give the EU, by comparison to episodes past, I want to give the EU a lot of attention this week because there's a lot of exciting stuff happened. We're having a really good series of ties going into this upcoming week of Super Week, but before we get there, we kind of have to tackle the elephant in the room of the Gambit SK issue. Now, for those of you who are not aware of this issue, what happened was during an SK Gambit game, Darian was playing Aatrox in the top, and SK was able to identify a bug that gave early game Aatrox an advantage. There was a pause called. A judge was able to confirm, like, hey, this is a bug, this is a problem, and the game continued. Game ending up in Gambit's favor. Now, what should have happened in this scenario, and it was identified afterwards, this wasn't something that, fans or the teams kind of brought up. This is Riot's process going through. What ended up happening afterwards was the Riot came back and said, hey, we're going to have to replay that game. The judge should have given the team who was affected by the bug the option to either reform that game day of or to rematch the game afterwards live. Greg, is it reform? Because I know we were talking about this earlier. Is it reform or is it just continue as is?
I believe it's the option to, one or the other.
Okay, yeah, so those were the two.
We could remake it because it was so early too.
Right.
Immediately.
So remake or go on afterwards, or to continue to play the game. So that option wasn't given. So the game was played. Gambit was awarded a victory, and then afterwards they said, nope, we're going to remake the game. And the second time around, SK won. So disadvantage Gambit. They had a bug that was used. They got burned for it. Whether or not that was intentional probably will never be known. It's all speculation. It is what it is. I think Riot went through and they did all their due diligence and they identified all of their parts and they have all their ducks in a row. But the unfortunate side effect is that now we have witch hunts going on among Reddit. Reddit detectives are on the case. They're pointing out Nidalee Spear issues in TSM vs. Curse games. How do you guys feel like this is going to progress throughout our time here?
Well, one of the things they, I think, released today, like Nick Allen followed up a little bit on his original statement.
Yeah.
And it was that the judge or the referee thought that SK was the ones who had to ask for a remake, and SK thought that the referee was supposed to ask them if they wanted it. And so each team kind of was each side was at a stalemate. And so that's why it was never offered.
Right.
But
so I mean, it was a screw up. Screw ups happen. Whatever. We move on. We'll just have to watch for these things in the future, I guess. I mean, this is an unfortunate case of officiating, and I really don't think it goes any further than that. There's a lot of people discussing this issue and throwing out hypotheticals and now pointing out all these bugs in game. At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. What happened. It's in the books. Riot did their best to be as transparent about it as possible, and that's really where it's at. I have concerns about teams going in and starting to super complain about every little thing, but without really going too deep into the issue, I think that pretty much covers the basics. Any other thoughts on that before I slide away on what could be a 20-minute discussion on rules and hypotheticals.
I mean, we saw a bunch of bugs, or I shouldn't say a bunch. We saw everyone have their perfect recall on Reddit, pretty much bring up every single bug that's ever happened in professional play and referencing it and asking why those weren't remade. So,
Right.
But those are sometimes when there wasn't a strict rule set in place like they have for the LCS.
And now that we have one, I think it's pretty clear. Obviously the referee didn't implement it properly, but I think the policy itself is pretty sound. You ask the affected team if they want the opportunity to start the game over, or if they feel like they can keep going, and that's fair enough.
Right, and the situation went down like it went down. Riot made their decision. Both teams had plenty of time to think about it. I mean, they both had the same information about each other going into the next game, and that time SK took the advantage. And knowing how the EU works, that could have been Gambit just as well. So, moving on from that, we currently sit in a crazy standing situation in the EU LCS. I'm going to run down the standings for you really quick. So as of this week, Alliance currently stands in first place at 14-10, neck and neck with SK and Fnatic both sitting at the same. Gambit followed by that for second place, tied with Roccat at 13-11. Copenhagen Wolves in sixth, technically, 11-13, and Superhot Crew 10-14, Millennium 7-17. Not looking good for Millennium. Not looking good
Not
at all.
Well, they're relegated.
They need to win every single game, and Superhot Crew needs to lose every single game.
No,
they're out. They're done.
No, they need to win.
Wow.
There's a big tiebreaker situation that can be forced because the Wolves own that head-to-head tiebreaker over Millennium, so they kind of have to root for Super Hot Crew or Roccat at the same time. No, only Super Hot Crew at the same time. They need to have like a three-way tie. That's pretty much the only way.
Well, I mean, the standing right now on where I'm looking has them listed as being locked up for 7th or 8th. Like I don't. The way they're saying it's not good.
They can't make it out. They can't make it out because they would overtake. Like let's say in the case of Millennium winning every game. Oh, I see what you're saying, Tom. Millennium would have to win every game. Super Hot Crew would have to lose every game, and Copenhagen Wolves would have to lose every single game.
Yeah, well, Super Hot Crew would have to.
No. Super Hot Crew has to tie with them.
Well, no, it would be Super Hot Crew would beat Wolves to put them at 11-13, or sorry, at 11 wins, and Millennium would also have to get to 11 wins to make a three-way tie.
Correct.
And in that scenario, it looks like Super Hot would be tied with they'd go 2-2 with Wolves, and Wolves 4-0'd Millennium.
Yeah, let's just put it this way: it's not going to happen.
There's a lot of speculation.
It's a very don't say that because anything could happen in Europe. The last place team in week 1 is currently sitting in a tie for first place. The 0-4 Alliance are currently tied with the 8-game losing streak Fnatic and SK, who was supposed to be in the bottom of the standings. So don't say nothing can happen.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I'm seeing right now, and I think is kind of funny, at least on the NA side, you've got 3 teams that have locked up at least playoff spots with C9, TSM, and CLG. And as far as it looks right here, Fnatic, I don't want to even think about the tiebreaker that makes this work. They're the only team to have locked up a playoff spot at all. So they're in 1st through 6th, which really isn't saying much because there's such a small differential between those spots.
Who has the actual? Is it Alliance with the actual first place? Do they have? They have that commanding win. So
no. That's yet to be decided because they still have to play Fnatic. I mean, technically, at this point in time,
right?
I would have to say yes. As of today, yes. But as of Tuesday, it could completely swap.
Well, let's take a look at that schedule. Let's break this open and just see the craziness that's going to happen. So, all of this starts Tuesday, April 1st at 11 a.m. We have for Eastern time for those of you watching at home. That is Fnatic versus Alliance, followed by Roccat versus Super Hot Crew, SK Gaming versus Fnatic, Millennium versus Super Hot Crew, and Copenhagen Wolves versus Gambit. We'll just take this day by day. So obviously the big games to watch Fnatic versus Alliance, and SK versus Fnatic. I feel like Fnatic is getting their shit rocked day one. The two top teams that they're going to have to be playing against are their first two games. Then their next game, next day, is going to be against Gambit. So they're really not getting any breaks. Afterwards, they play Roccat.
They played the top every other top team.
I think they have probably the hardest schedule at this point of any of the top teams in contention right now.
It's tough to say because all the top teams play each other, so everybody has their own schedule.
Yeah, but then you got SK who plays one team tied for first, and then the bottom three teams, and I like their chances a little bit better. Just on a schedule perspective, but that doesn't really mean a lot. We've seen
right, and I think the drive right now for all of these teams to get on top of this pile is super high. I feel like teams like Super Hot Crew, Copenhagen Wolves, definitely Millennium. It's just not like there's going to be a little bit just to get out of the relegation spot between Super Hot Crew and the Wolves, but I mean, to stay, I guess you're really looking for rankings as you go into the split tournament and who you're going to be playing from those teams that you're really fighting for. And I don't know, I don't know if I see that necessarily as big of a motivation. I think number 1 and number 2, those are the two spots that are contended most, and then you just don't want to be in relegations. I don't think Millennium has any chance of getting out of relegations, and I think the people fighting most to get into that number 1 spot are going to be Roccat and up, basically. Gambit, Fnatic, SK, and Alliance.
Yep.
So it's going to be interesting for sure. I think a lot of this is going to get decided pretty early, and I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what these first 2 days result in, and then I think day 3 is where things might settle down a little bit. So getting into day 2, we have Alliance on Millennium, should be a gimme. Gambit versus Roccat, that should be a good one. Super Hot Crew on SK, Millennium on Roccat, SK on the Wolves, Gambit on Fnatic. Gambit on Fnatic probably being one of the most pivotal games of that week.
It should be one of the most fun to watch.
Oh, for sure.
everything's pivotal this week. It seems anything could. I mean, that first day could make or break Fnatic's season, considering they have the two big ones.
Yeah, I mean, 2 losses from them is going to be such a hard pill to swallow, and then you have two more really hard games going into it. So, and that's Rockat's last game. If they're in any position to move up from that match where it's going to be a significant victory, they could be going hard enough to actually win that. But the final day, Millennium versus SK, Wolves on Super Hot Crew, Alliance on Gambit, probably the most pivotal game. I mean, at this point, it really depends on how the rest of the games go as to which is going to be the one to watch there. But Fnatic on Roccat and Alliance on the Copenhagen Wolves.
I really want to see if Alliance can pull off the 12-0 streak, because I think they're at 8 in a row right now, jumping from, it looks like 7th place just 3 weeks ago to all the way up to first doesn't really mean a lot, considering you could easily see anybody finishing in any spot right now. I mean, I think it's still possible that any of those top teams could end up in relegation by a crazy series of events. I don't know about
that, but
no, I'm saying like it's still possible. Whereas in the North in NA, it's not possible in the slightest.
And
the actual relegation spot, not the losing in the tournament side of things.
Right. Well, let's not forget that one of these teams, one of the victor teams, will be pushed into relegations at the end of the tournament. Whoever comes in last place there is going to get bumped down. And, I mean, just looking at the Great Five, we'll call them, Alliance, SK, Fnatic, and Gambit and Roccat, I can't not picture the Copenhagen Wolves getting pushed down into that spot. Having to go into relegations, having to go against the challenger teams. I haven't paid attention at all to EU Challenger this year.
Ninjas in pajamas.
Are they really looking hot?
Yeah, they're still looking like ninjas in pajamas.
Is it still the same team?
Not entirely.
Okay.
They had to switch out their jungler because he's not old enough to compete in LCS.
Classic EU problems.
Classic EU.
You right there, Mont?
Something just made a weird noise in my ceiling.
That's
Whoa.
EU punishing you for not watching.
Yeah. No, I think. Good.
I think that we're going to be in for a very pleasant or very unpleasant surprise when it comes to who will be the third team in EU relegation. Despite the incredible performances from those top 5 teams compared to the Copenhagen Wolves, I don't know. Like, honestly, if I had to put money on someone going into relegation, I might actually put my money on SK.
You think SK was going to go into relegation?
I could see SK going into relegation.
I don't think Tom's that far off, actually.
I think it's going to be difficult for them to. Oh, just because of who they play this week, I think it's going to be difficult for them to drop out of top 2, just because they've got Wolves, SHC, and Millennium. Like, they really have by far the easiest week.
Well, one thing that could happen, they do have the easiest week on paper, but if they spend all their time prepping for that big Fnatic game, some of these teams that are at the bottom, like you said, the Wolves especially, they actually do have something to fight for. And that's a recipe for an upset.
I think if anybody, we'll say in the world where Copenhagen Wolves they're not in relegation now, but they don't get put into relegation through the tournament. I think if anybody, it's going to be Gambit. Because I think Gambit has the ability to suck really hard when they don't take teams seriously. And I think that's what could happen. I think they go in thinking they're hot shit. They end up not being too hot shit because they're not taking their team seriously. And then they get pushed down into relegation. Now, I think they would be able to come out of that fine and not have to get bumped. I think Gambit, even just as a name, like you can't take that out of the EU LCS. They're classic. I mean, you obviously could. There's no rule against it. But I think Gambit would be Gambit in that relegation match and would just stomp it. But I think if anybody could mess it up that hard, I think it could be them. Backs against the wall.
Are you doubting the glory of AP Renekton?
I am, actually, pretty significantly.
We almost had Zion Spartan going for the Zanyas, and he decided to buy a Warmogs and be efficient.
He sold it. I love stuff like that, though. I love it when they do stuff that just throws the casters through a loop, and they're like, well, let's, I guess, talk about it, and then you throw them off on what the AP ratio is and just confuse them.
Yeah. Well, I'm hoping that they're not going to be on. They seem to be a little bit on tilt from the Riot ruling, considering they dropped a game to Super Hot Crew a little bit.
Shit. That is not that's not the reason.
I'm not saying
not the reason.
Hey, it can.
I would be shocked if that was the case.
If that was the reason, go home. Get beat by a challenger team who cares more. Like, you can't sit there and poo-poo about the rules. The rules are the rules. Deal with it. You didn't prepare enough for your game against SK. You played a whole game against them. You beat them. You know what you did right in that game. You didn't do it the second time around. Sorry, Gambit. You lost.
Oh, no, I'm not talking about the SK game. I'm talking about them losing to Super Hot Crew, like, the next day, which I think no one probably saw coming.
Right.
But I'm just saying, there are chances for that. Like, people to be kind of, like, morally down when they had a big win over essentially a top rival taken out of their hands.
True. I actually could see that being a pretty big discussion point. The life of that issue furthering itself if SK wins it and goes
by, like, a
to
game.
All-Stars.
Especially if it's by a one-game thing. Then.
Yeah, that will be the game that makes or breaks that. So,
I still feel like Gambit's going to use the O2 week this week to storm through Super Week and demolish absolutely everybody. Like, I will go on record for saying if Alliance have an 11-win win streak or a 10-game win streak going into that first game on Thursday, it will end with Gambit.
Well, I think their game, they played the last game day one against Copenhagen Wolves, and if Copenhagen Wolves can pull out a win, I think that's a demoralizing punch, because then they have to go Rockcat, Fnatic, Alliance. It's like just scaling in difficulty.
It's a gauntlet.
Essentially. Yeah. So I mean, if you're not the kind of person who believes that emotion and conditioning and mental fatigue plays into whether or not a team is successful, watch the Super Week, because this is going to be, it's like every game essentially here, except for Millennium, is crucial to these teams. And hell, even if you're Millennium, you should look at your situation and go, you know what? We're going to get pushed into relegations. Let's work as hard as possible to make this super difficult for everybody else. They have the ability to really screw over teams.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if they can beat any of these teams going in, it highly affects each and every single one of them and their positioning. They go up against Super Hot Crew, a team who's fighting to get out of that relegation spot. They go up against SK Gaming, one of the teams who are up at the top right now. They're going to be going up against
Alliance and Rocket. They could end alliances. Never mind.
You know what, though? That's going to happen now. Because you said it, and you're just the slayer of all things.
He's the opposite.
glorious.
He's saying the opposite of things, considering he said Scar was going to be there forever.
And I just said that Millennium wasn't going to end the winning spree. Watch.
Oh, yep, it's over.
Millennium's...
Boom.
Oh, man. If Millennium beat Alliance, I don't know.
Rip Alliance.
Well,
at that
that's
point.
brings up an interesting point. When Alliance's win streak does eventually end, how much of a morale toll is that going to take on them? In other words, how much is the momentum they're building right now sort of self-sustaining? And when that gets taken away, do they deal with it well? That's going to be a question that comes up if they lose.
You saw that actually earlier in this split, because Fnatic started out, I think, 7-0 and dropped 7 or 8 straight games right after that.
I think this is Alliance figuring themselves out. I think it took them some time to get into a groove and to figure out how they work and figure out how all the EU LCS teams work. And I think they've now got it down to a science, and they're going to continue to win from here on out.
This is arguably the test to see if they really are a top team, though. Fnatic, the first matchup, Millennium, which is pretty much a bye going into the next day. Then on the last day, you play Gambit and then Copenhagen Wolves.
And you play a hungry Gambit, too. You play a Gambit that's either super defeated and is just going to be a pillow against a rock, or I need to come up with better analogies.
A pillow against a rock.
Yeah, that's whatever. It's either going to be that, or it's going to be a Gambit Gaming that's hot, and it's going to be a good game. Either way, this is going to be a crazy week in the EU. I honestly, I feel bad because I came into the show loving NA and being so interested in it and thinking that EU is just EU and whatever. I actually get a lot more enjoyment out of the EU games now. And I don't know why I feel bad about that, but I think it's super
because
fun.
you want NA to be better, which is why this all-star format is better, because NA has a chance to not be last this time, or second to last this time.
Yeah.
And only beating EU.
Yeah, and only
who couldn't really communicate, considering they were made up of. That's going to be interesting to see what happens when they combine all the Korean, Chinese, EU, NA people. Like one for, I think it's one for each region on each team. I missed a region. I think it's Southeast Asia.
Yeah.
But yeah, they'll have one from each of those regions on a team, and I don't know how much
Smart
English
things.
all of them know, because I know that the NA people don't know a lot of other languages, so they're gonna
Have you ever played solo queue?
Well,
like that.
yeah.
Well, that about wraps it up for us this week, I think. I'm super excited. We can't take predictions for this week. We'll do them offline. I also didn't take the score tallies for this week. Cereal, if you're not up to date with that, I've been keeping scores of Greg and Optimus Tom. Both
For
of
the
you
bow tie.
guys send me your predictions. I will post out to Twitter where the current standings are, and we'll go from there. Again, the winner is going to get a super awesome LCS TForce rundown bow tie. Or maybe I'll make some other form of fabric. We shall see. An ascot.
I didn't pick one up. I told him I was.
The
Didn't pick
ascot
one up this
mascot.
weekend.
Well, no, I guess Tom has his tie. But again, please leave us a review on iTunes. For those of you listening in podcast land, do not forget to come and visit us every Sunday night at 9 p.m. Eastern on stream.trinityforcepodcast.com to listen into the show. The chat room's always awesome. They creepily hit on half of the show most of the time and talk
Only
about
half,
how
though.
cute Tom and now Cereal is.
Well, that was my friend. in there.
See, that's what I
Still
always
count.
think it is.
Still
But
Oh no, I mean, sorry, no, it's somebody random.
Yeah, there you
I'm
go.
really
every
flattered
time
right
somebody's
now.
like, "Ooh, Tom is so cute," I'm like, "Haha, that's right, I am," and it's not me. But yeah, don't forget to find us at PAX. This is Montganorum leaving you again, like I do every Sunday. I'm such a bad person. Have a good night, guys. We need a send-off song. We need music.
Do.
Don't
Something
they?
fun.
Doesn't the TForce main one do those just random songs from League
It's a lot.
parodies?
What I don't love is that we get as our intro music.
The
we
old one.
get their old theme song, and not even the words.
Yeah, it's just the music.
We just get the music.
It's pretty
That's
funky
all.
though.
We need to get our own proper theme song.
Yeah, you
where's the
like
rapper?
creative
Let's
people
find
out
one.
there. Go make us something fun. Go make us something nice for us. I'd like that. All right, everybody. Have a good night.
Bye bye.
Yeah, you guys can say bye. You don't just have to sit there.
See you guys.
See,
I don't want to leave.
no, we're going.
And it's gone.